Miss Van Schuyler entered the room. She looked even older and yellower than usual this morning. Her small dark eyes had an air of venomous displeasure in them. Race rose and bowed. "We are very sorry to trouble you, Miss Van Schuyler. It's very good of you. Please sit down."
"I dislike being mixed up in this. I resent it very much. I do not wish to be associated in any way with this very unpleasant affair."
Quite. I was just saying to Monsieur Poirot that the sooner we took your statement the better, as then you need have no further trouble. Miss Van Schuyler looked at Poirot with something approaching favour.
"I'm glad you both realize my feelings. I am not accustomed to anything of this kind."
"Precisely, mademoiselle. That is why we wish to free you from unpleasantness as quickly as possible. Now, you went to bed last night. At what time?"
10 o'clock is my usual time. Last night I was rather later, as Cornelia Robson very inconsiderately kept me waiting."
"Très bien, mademoiselle. Now, what did you hear after you retired?"
"I sleep very lightly."
That is very fortunate for us."
"I was awakened by that rather flashy young woman, Mrs. Doyle's maid, who said 'Bonne nuit, madame,' in what I cannot think is anything else but an unnecessarily loud voice."
"And after that?"
"I went to sleep again. I woke up thinking someone was in my cabin, but I realized it was someone in the cabin next door."
"In Mrs. Doyle's cabin?"
"Yes. Noisy. Then I heard someone outside on the deck, and then a splash."
"You have no idea what time this was?"
"I can tell you exactly the time. It was 10 minutes past 1.
"You are sure of that?"
"Yes. I looked at my little clock that stands by my bed."
"You did not hear a shot?"
"No, nothing of that kind."
"But it might possibly have been a shot that awakened you?" Miss Van Schuyler considered the question, her toad-like head on one side.
"It might."
"And you have no idea what might have caused the splash you heard?"
"Not at all. I know perfectly."
"You know?"
"Certainly. I did not like the sound of prowling around. I got up and I went to the door of my cabin. Miss Otterbourne was leaning over the side. She just dropped something into the water."
"Miss Otterbourne?" Race sounded really surprised.
"Yes."
"You're quite sure it was Miss Otterbourne?"
"I saw her face distinctly."
"She did not see you?"
"I don't think so."
"And what did her face look like, mademoiselle?"
"She was in a condition of considerable emotion."
"And then?"
"Miss Otterbourne went away round the stern of a boat. I returned to bed."
There was a knock at the door, and the manager entered. He carried in his hand a dripping bundle. "We've got it, Colonel." Race took the package. He unwrapped fold after fold of sodden velvet. Out of it fell a coarse handkerchief, faintly stained with pink, wrapped round a small, pearl-handled pistol. "You see, my idea was right. It was thrown overboard." He held the pistol out in the palm of his hand. "What do you say, Monsieur Poirot? Is this the pistol you saw at the Cataract Hotel that night?" Poirot examined it carefully, then said quietly, "Yes, that is it. There is the ornamental work on it, and the initials J.B. It is an article de luxe, a very feminine production, but none the less a lethal weapon." 22, murmured Race. He took out the clip. 2 bullets fired. There doesn't seem much doubt about it.
Ahem. What about my stole?"
"Your stole, mademoiselle?"
"Yes, that is my velvet stole you have there."
Race picked up the dripping folds of material. "This is yours, Miss Van Schuyler."
"Certainly it is mine. I missed it last night. I was asking everyone if they'd seen it."
Poirot questioned Race with a glance, and the latter gave a slight nod of assent. "Where did you see it last, Miss Van Schuyler?"
"I had it in the saloon yesterday evening. When I came to go to bed, I could not find it anywhere."
"You realize what it's been used for?" He spread it out, indicating with a finger the scorching and several small holes. "The murderer wrapped it round the pistol to deaden the noise of a shot."
"What impertinence!"
"I shall be glad, Miss Van Schuyler, if you would tell me the extent of your previous acquaintance with Mrs. Doyle."
"There was no previous acquaintance."
"But you knew of her?"
"I knew who she was, of course."
"But your families were not acquainted?"
"As a family, we have always prided ourselves on being exclusive, Colonel Race. My dear mother would never have dreamed of calling upon any of the Hart's family, who, outside of their wealth, were nobodies."
"That is all you have to say, Miss Van Schuyler?"
"I have nothing to add to what I have told you. Lynette Ridgway was brought up in England, and I never saw her till I came aboard this boat."
She rose. Poirot opened the door. She marched out. "Well, that's her story, and she's going to stick to it. It may be true, I don't know. But Rosalie Otterbourne, I hadn't expected that." Poirot shook his head in a perplexed manner. Then he brought down his hand on the table with a sudden bang. "It does not make sense. No, it does not make sense." "What do you mean exactly?"
"I mean that up to a point it is all the clear sailing. Someone sneaked in there and retrieved the pistol. Jacqueline de Belfort's pistol, I remember. Somebody shot Lynette Doyle with that pistol and wrote the letter J on the wall. All so clear, is it not? All pointing to Jacqueline de Belfort as the murderess. And then what does the murderer do? Leave the pistol, the damning pistol, Jacqueline de Belfort's pistol, for everyone to find? No! He or she throws the pistol, that particularly damning bit of evidence, overboard. Why, my friend, why?" "It's odd." "It is more than odd. It is impossible."
"Not impossible since it happened."
"I do not mean that. I mean that the sequence of events is impossible. Something is wrong."
Colonel Race glanced curiously at his colleague. He respected, he had reason to respect, the brain of Hercule Poirot. Yet for the moment he did not follow the other man's process of thought. He asked no question, however. He seldom did ask questions. He proceeded straightforwardly with the matter in hand. "Well, what's the next thing to be done? Question the Otterbourne girl?" "Yes, that may advance us a little." Rosalie Otterbourne entered ungraciously. She did not look nervous or frightened in any way, merely unwilling and sulky.
"Well, what is it?"
"We're investigating Mrs. Doyle's death." Rosalie nodded. "Will you tell me what you did last night?" Rosalie reflected a minute.
"Mother and I went to bed early, before 11. We didn't hear anything in particular, except a bit of fuss outside Dr. Besner's cabin. I heard the old man's German voice booming away. Of course, I didn't know what it was all about till this morning."
"You didn't hear a shot?"
"No."
"Did you leave your cabin at all last night?"
"No."
"You're quite sure of that?"
"What do you mean? Of course I'm sure."
"You did not, for instance, go round to the starboard side of a boat and throw something overboard?" The colour rose in her face.
"Is there any rule against throwing things overboard?"
"No, of course not." "Then you did?"
"No, I didn't. I never left my cabin, I tell you."
"Then if anyone says that they saw you—"
"Who says they saw me?"
"Miss Van Schuyler."
"Miss Van Schuyler?"
"Yes, Miss Van Schuyler. She says she looked out of her cabin and saw you throw something over the side."
"Well, that is a damned lie."
Then, as though struck by a sudden thought, she asked,
"What time was this?"
It was Poirot who answered. "It was 10 minutes past 1, mademoiselle."
"Did she see anything else?"
Poirot looked at her curiously. He stroked his chin. "See? No. But she heard something."
"What did she hear?"
"Someone moving about in Madame Doyle's cabin."
"I see."
Rosalie was pale now, deadly pale. "And you persist in saying that you threw nothing overboard, mademoiselle?"
"What on earth should I run about throwing things overboard in the middle of the night?"
"There might be a reason. An innocent reason."
"Innocent?"
"That is what I said. You see, mademoiselle, something was thrown overboard last night, something that was not innocent." Race silently held out the bundle of stained velvet, opening it to display its contents.
"What's that? What she was killed with?"
"Yes, mademoiselle."
"And you think I did it? What utter nonsense! Why on earth would I want to kill Lynette Doyle? I don't even know her. Oh, the whole thing is totally ridiculous."
"Remember, Miss Otterbourne," said Race, "that Miss Van Schuyler is prepared to swear she saw your face quite clearly in the moonlight."
"That old cat! She's probably half blind anyway. It wasn't me she saw. Now can I go?"
Race nodded, and Rosalie Otterbourne left the room. The eyes of the two men met. Race lighted a cigarette. "Well, that's that. Flat contradiction. Which of them do you believe?" "I have a little idea that neither of them was being quite frank." "That's the worst of this job. So many people keep back the truth for positively futile reasons. What's our next move? Get on with the questioning of the passengers?"
"I think so. It is always well to proceed with order and method."
Mrs. Otterbourne, dressed in floating batik material, succeeded her daughter. She corroborated Rosalie's statement that they had both gone to bed before 11 o'clock. She herself had heard nothing of interest during the night. She could not say whether Rosalie had left their cabin or not. On the subject of the crime she was inclined to hold forth. "The crime passionnel, the primitive instinct to kill, so closely allied to the sex instinct. That girl, Jacqueline, half Latin, hot-blooded, obeying the deepest instincts of her being, stealing forth, revolver in hand. Bang, 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 all over, dead. But Jacqueline de Belfort did not shoot Madame Doyle. That we know for certain. It is proved. Her husband, then? The bloodlust and the sex instinct, a sexual crime. Oh, there are many well-known instances. Mr. Doyle was shot through the leg, quite unable to move. The bone was fractured. He spent the night with Dr. Besner." Mrs. Otterbourne was even more disappointed. She searched her mind hopefully. "Of course! How foolish of me! Miss Bowers!" "Miss Bowers?" "Yes, naturally. It's so clear. Psychologically. Repression. The repressed virgin, I say, maddened by the sight of these two, a young husband and wife, passionately in love with each other. Of course it was her. She's just the type. Sexually unattractive, innately respectable. In my book, The Barren Vine." "Your suggestions have been most helpful, Mrs. Otterbourne, but I think we must go on with our job now. Thank you so much." He escorted her gallantly to the door, and came back wiping his brow. "What a poisonous woman! Whew! Why didn't somebody murder her?" "It may yet happen," Poirot consoled him. "There may be more sense in it. Whom have we got left? Pennington. We shall keep him for the end, I think. Racchetti, Ferguson." Signor Racchetti was very voluble, very agitated. "But what an infamy! A woman so young, so beautiful, indeed. It is indeed a most inhuman crime." His hands flew expressively up in the air. His answers were prompt. He had gone to bed early, very early. In fact, immediately after dinner. He had read for a while a very interesting pamphlet lately published, which threw an entirely new light on the painted pottery of the Anatolian foothills. He had put out his light some time before 11, and no, he had not heard any shot. No, nor a sound like the pop of a cork. The only thing he had heard, but that was later, in the middle of the night, was a splash, a big splash, just near his porthole. "Your cabin is on the lower deck, on the starboard side, is it not?" Yes, that is so, and I heard the big splash." His arms threw up once more to describe the bigness of the splash. "Can you tell me at what time that was?" It was 1, 2, 3 hours after I go to sleep." perhaps 2 hours. About 10 minutes past 1, for instance?
Oh, it might be, yes. But what a terrible crime! He's so inhuman. So charming a woman.
Exit Signor Ricchetti, still gesticulating freely. Race looked at Poirot. Poirot raised his eyebrows expressively, then shrugged his shoulders. They passed on to Mr. Ferguson. Ferguson was difficult. He sprawled insolently in a chair.
Grand to-do about this business, he sneered. What's it really matter? Lots of superfluous women in the world.
Can we have an account of your movements last night, Mr. Ferguson? Don't see why you should, but I don't mind. I mooched around a good bit, went ashore with Miss Robson. When she went back to the boat, I mooched around by myself for a while. Came back, turned in around about midnight. Your cabin is on the lower deck, starboard side?
Yes, I'm up among the knobs.
Did you hear a shot? It might only have sounded like a popping of a cork.
Yes, I think I did, actually. Something like a cork.
Can't remember when. Before I went to sleep. Oh, there was a lot of people around, though. Commotion, running about on the deck above. That was probably the shot fired by Mr. Belfour. You didn't hear another?
No.
Nor a splash?
A splash? Yes, I believe I did hear a splash.
There's so much row going on, I can't be sure about it. Did you leave your cabin during the night?
No, I didn't. And I didn't participate in the good work, worse luck.
Come, Mr. Ferguson, don't behave childishly.
Why shouldn't I say what I think? I believe in violence.
But you don't practice what you preach. I wonder... It was the man Fleetwood, was it not, who told you that Lynette Doyle was one of the richest women in England?
What's Fleetwood got to do with this?
Fleetwood, my friend, had an excellent motive for killing Lynette Doyle. He had a special grudge against her. Ferguson came out of his seat like a jack-in-the-box.
So that's your dirty game, is it? Put it on a poor devil like Fleetwood who can't defend himself and who's got no money to hire lawyers. Well, I tell you this, if you try and saddle Fleetwood with this business, you've got me to deal with.
And who exactly are you? Asked Poirot. Mr. Ferguson got rather red.
I can stick by my friends anyway.
Well, Mr. Ferguson, I think that is all we need for the present. As the door closed behind Ferguson, he remarked unexpectedly, Rather a likeable young cub, really. You don't think he is the man you are after? I hardly think so. I suppose he is on board. The information was very precise. Oh, well, one job at a time. Let's have a go at Pennington.
Andrew Pennington displayed all the conventional reactions of grief and shock. He was, as usual, carefully dressed. He had changed into a black tie. His long, clean-shaven face bore a bewildered expression.
Gentlemen, this business has got me right down. Little Lynette. Why, I remember her as the cutest little thing you can imagine. How proud of her Melwish Ridgway used to be, too. Well, there's no point in going into that. Just tell me what I can do. That's all I ask.
To begin with, Mr. Pennington, did you hear anything last night?
No, sir, I can't say I did. I have the cabin right next to Dr. Besner's number 41, and I heard a certain commotion going on in there around about midnight or so, but of course I didn't know what it was at the time.
You heard nothing else? No shots?
Nothing whatever of that kind.
And you went to bed at what time?
Well, must have been some time after 11.
I don't suppose it's news to you to know that there's plenty of rumours going about the boat. That half-French girl, Jacqueline de Belfort.
There was something fishy there, you know. Lynette didn't tell me anything, but naturally I wasn't born blind and deaf. There'd been some affair between her and Simon sometime, hadn't there? Cherchez la femme, that's a pretty good sound rule, and I should say you wouldn't have to chercher far.
You mean that in your belief Jacqueline de Belfort shot Madame Doyle?
Well, that's what it looks like to me. Of course, I don't know anything.
Unfortunately, we do know something.
Huh? We know that it is quite impossible for Mademoiselle de Belfort to have shot Madame Doyle." He explained carefully the circumstances. Pennington seemed reluctant to accept them. "Well, I agree it looks all right on the face of it, but this hospital nurse woman, I'll bet she didn't stay awake all night. She dozed off, the girl slipped out and in again." "Hardly likely, Monsieur Pennington. She had administered a strong opiate, remember? And anyway, a nurse is in the habit of sleeping lightly and waking when her patient wakes." "Well, it sounds rather fishy to me." "I think you must take it from me, Mr. Pennington, that we have examined all the possibilities very carefully. The result is quite definite. Jacqueline de Belfort did not shoot Mrs. Doyle. So we are forced to look elsewhere, and that is where we hope you may be able to help us." "I?" "Yes. You are an intimate friend of the dead woman. You know the circumstances of her life. In all probability you know them much better than her husband does, since he only made her acquaintance a few months ago. You would know, for instance, of anyone who had a grudge against her. You would know, perhaps, whether there was anyone who had a motive for desiring her death." Andrew Pennington passed his tongue over rather dry-looking lips. "I assure you I have no idea. You see, Lynette was brought up in England. I know very little of her surroundings and associations." "And yet there was someone on board who was interested in Madame's removal. She had a very near escape before, you remember, at this very place, when the boulder crashed down. Ah, but you were not there, perhaps?" "No, I was inside the temple at the time. Well, I heard about it afterwards, of course. It was a very near escape. But possibly an accident, don't you think?" Poirot shrugged his shoulders. "One thought so at the time. Now one wonders." "Oh, yes, of course. Now—" Pennington wiped his face with a fine silk handkerchief. Colonel Race went on. "Mr. Doyle happened to mention someone being on board who bore a grudge, not against her personally, but against her family. Now, do you know who that could be?" Pennington looked genuinely astonished. "No, I've no idea." "She didn't mention the matter to you?" "No." "You were an intimate friend of her father's. You cannot remember any business operations of his that might have resulted in ruin for some business opponent?" Pennington shook his head helplessly. "No outstanding case. Such operations were frequent, of course, but I cannot recall anyone who uttered threats. Nothing of that kind." "So in short, Mr. Pennington, you cannot help us?" "It seems so. I deplore my inadequacy, gentlemen." Race interchanged a glance with Poirot. Then he said, "I'm sorry too. We'd had hopes." He got up as a sign the interview was at an end. Andrew Pennington said, "As Doyle's laid up, I expect he'd like me to see to things. Pardon me, Colonel, what exactly are the arrangements?" "When we leave here, we shall make a non-stop run to Chalal, arriving there tomorrow morning." "And the body?" "Will be removed to one of the cold storage chambers." "I see. Thank you, gentlemen." Poirot and Race again interchanged a glance. Mr. Pennington was not at all comfortable. No. And Mr. Pennington was sufficiently perturbed to tell a rather stupid lie. He was not in the temple of Abu Simbel when that boulder fell. I can swear to that. I had just come from there. "Well, a very stupid lie, then, and a very revealing one." "Yes, but for the moment we handle him with the gloves of kid, is it not so?" "That was the idea." "My friend, you and I understand each other to a marvel." There was a faint grinding noise, a stir beneath their feet. The Karnak had started on her homeward journey to Chalal. "The pearls, that is the next thing to be cleared up." "You have a plan?" "Yes. Look, it'll be lunchtime in half an hour. At the end of the meal, I propose to make an announcement. Just state the fact that the pearls have been stolen, and that I must request everyone to stay in the dining saloon while a search is conducted." Poirot nodded approvingly. "It is well imagined. Whoever took the pearls still has them. By giving no warning beforehand, there will be no chance of their being thrown overboard in a panic." Race drew some sheets of paper towards him. "I'd like to make a brief précis of the facts as I go along. It keeps one's mind free of confusion." "You do well. Method and order. They are everything." Race wrote for some minutes in his small, neat script. Finally, he pushed the result of his labours towards Poirot. "Anything you don't agree with there?" Poirot picked up the sheets. They were headed, "Murder of Mrs. Lynette Doyle. Mrs. Doyle was last seen alive by her maid, Louise Bourget, time 11:30, approx. From 11:30 to 12:20, following have alibis: Cornelia Robson, James Fanthorpe, Simon Doyle, Jacqueline de Belfort, nobody else. But crime almost certainly committed after that time, since it is practically certain that pistol used was Jacqueline de Belfort's, which was then in her handbag. That her pistol was used is not absolutely certain until after post-mortem and expert evidence re-bullet, but it may be taken as overwhelmingly probable. A probable course of events. X, murderer, was witness of scene between Jacqueline and Simon Doyle in observation saloon, and noted where pistol went under settee. After the saloon was vacant, X procured pistol, his or her idea being that Jacqueline de Belfort would be thought guilty of the crime, and on this theory certain people are automatically cleared of suspicion. Cornelia Robson, since she had no opportunity to take the pistol before James Fanthorpe returned to search for it. Miss Bowers, same. Dr. Besner, same. N.B. Fanthorpe is not definitely excluded from suspicion, since he could actually have pocketed the pistol while declaring himself unable to find it. Any other person could have taken the pistol during that 10 minutes interval. Possible motives for murder. Andrew Pennington. This is on the assumption that he's been guilty of fraudulent practices. There is a certain amount of evidence in favour of that, but not enough to justify making out a case against him. If it was he who rolled down the boulder, he is a man who can seize a chance when it presents itself. The crime clearly was not premeditated except in a general way. This night's shooting scene was an ideal opportunity. Objections to the theory of Pennington's guilt. Why did he throw the pistol overboard, since it constituted a valuable clue against J.B.? Fleetwood. Motive, revenge. Fleetwood considered himself injured by Lynette Doyle, might have overheard scene and noted position of pistol. He may have taken pistol because it was a handy weapon, rather than with the idea of throwing guilt on Jacqueline. That would fit in with throwing it overboard. But if that were the case, why did he write J in blood on the wall? N.B. Cheap handkerchief found with pistol more likely to have belonged to a man like Fleetwood than to one of the well-to-do passengers. Rosalie Otterbourne. Are we to accept Miss Van Schuyler's evidence of Rosalie's denial? Something was thrown overboard at the time, and that something was presumably the pistol wrapped up in the velvet stole. Points to be noted. Had Rosalie any motive? She may have disliked Lynette Doyle, and even been envious of her, but as a motive for murder it seems grossly inadequate. The evidence against her can be convincing only if we discover an adequate motive. As far as we know, there is no previous knowledge or link between Rosalie Otterbourne and Lynette Doyle. Miss Van Schuyler. The velvet stole in which pistol was wrapped belonged to her. According to her own statement, she last saw it in the observation saloon. She drew attention to its loss during the evening, and a search was made for it without success. How did the stole come into the possession of X? Did X purloin it some time early in the evening? But if so, why? Nobody could tell in advance that there was going to be a scene between Jacqueline and Simon. Did X find the stole in the saloon when he went to get the pistol from under the settee? And if so, why was it not found when the search for it was made? Did it never leave Miss Van Schuyler's possession? That is to say, did Miss Van Schuyler murder Lynette Doyle? Is her accusation of Rosalie Otterbourne a deliberate lie? If she did murder her, what was her motive? Other possibilities. Robbery as a motive. Possible, since the pearls have disappeared, and Lynette Doyle was certainly wearing them last night. Someone with a grudge against the Ridgway family. Possible, again, no evidence. We know that there is a dangerous man on board, a killer. Here we have a killer and a death. May not the two be connected? But we should have to show that Lynette Doyle possessed dangerous knowledge concerning this man. Conclusions. We can group the persons on board into two classes. those who had a possible motive or against whom there is definite evidence, and those who, as far as we know, are free of suspicion. Group 1. Andrew Pennington, Fleetwood, Rosalie Otterbourne, Miss Van Schuyler, Louise Bourget, robbery, Ferguson, political. Group 2. Mrs. Allerton, Tim Allerton, Cornelia Robson, Miss Bowers, Dr. Besner, Signor Rossetti, Mrs. Otterbourne, James Fanthorpe. Poirot pushed the paper back. It is very just, very exact, what you have written there. You agree with it? Yes. And now what is your contribution? Me, I pose myself one question. Why was the pistol thrown overboard? That's all? At the moment, yes. Until I can arrive at a satisfactory answer to that question, there is not sense anywhere. That is, that must be the starting point. You will notice, my friend, that in your summary of where we stand, you have not attempted to answer that point. Well, panic? Poirot picked up the sodden velvet wrap and smoothed it out, wet and limp, on the table. His fingers traced the scorched marks and burnt holes. Tell me, my friend, you are more conversant with firearms than I. Would such a thing as this, wrapped round a pistol, make much difference in muffling the sound? No, it wouldn't. Not like a silencer, for instance. A man, certainly a man who had much handling of firearms, would know that. But a woman would not know. Probably not. No. She would have read the detective stories, where they are not always very exact as to details. Race flicked the little pearl-handled pistol with his finger. This little fellow wouldn't make much noise anyway. Just a pop, that's all. With any other noise around, 10 to 1, you wouldn't notice it. Yes, I have reflected as to that. Poirot picked up a handkerchief. A man's handkerchief, but not a gentleman's handkerchief. Sachet Woolworth, I imagine. Threepence at most. The sort of handkerchief a man like Fleetwood would own. Yes, Andrew Pennington, I notice, carries a very fine silk handkerchief. Ferguson? Possibly, as a gesture. But then, it ought to be a bandana. Used it instead of a glove, I suppose, to hold the pistol and obviate fingerprints. The clue of the blushing handkerchief. Yes, quite a Jean-Fil colour, is it not? He laid it down and returned to the stove, once more examining the powder marks. All the same, it is odd. What's that? Madame Doyle, lying there so peacefully, with the little hole in her head. You remember how she looked? Race looked at him curiously. You know, I've got an idea you're trying to tell me something, but I haven't the faintest idea what it is.